Hello and welcome to another jungle tutorial. In this champion guide we will be taking an in-depth look at Warwick. Currently in the top tier for solo queue junglers, as he has been for a lot of the time since his rework back in 2017, I will give you the tools you need to succeed with Warwick and be able to hard carry games whether your team needs a tank, fighter, peeler or engager. We're going to start off by going over runes, followed by a look at how to maximize all of his abilities individually, what items synergize best with his kit, and then how to play him through the first clear, ganks, taking objectives, as well as team fights. Naturally, I will be recommending press the attack as your keystone. Yes, lethal tempo is a viable alternative, but I found much more success with press the attack, and I like the synergy it has with Warwick's passive, where as he scales and levels, his auto attacks do more damage, along with the natural increase in attack speed when a target is below 50% HP from the passive in his W. Coupled with his basic attacks healing him as he is below 50% HP, tripled when below 25% HP, the more damage his autos can do, the better it is for Warwick overall. Make sure you take the Alacrity rune as a default most of the time for the same reason above, but if you are against a supremely high CC team and in a tough matchup, the Tenacity is a good option. Finally, I like to take Last Stand as the bottom tier option for Warwick as it syncs up nicely with the attack speed healing steroids I just mentioned. For the domination tree as a secondary, the standard option of Sudden Impact and Relentless Hunter are strong, but I can also highly recommend going for Ravenous Hunter instead, and as you can see on your screen now, the healing benefits can become life-saving in very close skirmishes. Also feel free to switch from Sudden Impact, Relentless Hunter to Zombie Ward if you love vision as much as I do, as well as if you love to keep track of the enemy jungler and maximize count and jungling. I benefit much more from the residual vision of Zombie Ward in terms of map rotations, objective control and jungler tracking than I do from Sudden Impact, and that's why I've been taking this rune specifically. But all four of these options are strong, and if you are in lower MMR, Relentless Hunter is excellent for being all over the map so you can control as much as possible, and in solo queue, that's of the utmost importance. Usually at this stage we talk about the first clear items, but I feel that's better to do once you have an idea of the ability's full potential, so we're going to move on to that next. Let's start off with his Q. This is his primary scaling ability with damage, and it does percentage max HP damage, scales with a 120% AD and 90% AP. It also applies on hit effects, hence the nice combination it has with Jhin items, Iceborne Gauntlet and Trinity Force. It is a simple ability to use, but it has a ton of nuanced uses despite the point and click nature of it. The scaling healing percentage of the damage you do allows you to bait people into close fights when you can heal with a last second bite to kill the enemy, as well as ensure your survival. That being said, the usefulness of Q is in its ability to stay with enemies that are dashing or flashing away. You should be seeing numerous examples on your screen of me staying with my enemies, including a Lee Sin Eing to his team now where he's forced to use his ult to kick me out. If you are close enough to the enemy and you time your bite right, holding it down for a full duration will grant you a free ticket to travel with him, and from there you can secure a kill. Use the enemy's body language and knowledge of their kit to know when they intend to flee a situation. Act quickly by holding down Q as long as you can, but be aware of doing this in all instances as you don't want to end up underneath, a tower or their entire team. Using a full Q to move to the other side of a target is also imperative when avoiding CC, as you can see with this Blitzcrank example and the Leona ult. You cannot be displaced while in the act of using your Q, so keep in mind how you can maneuver around situations with this ability, and the longer you are using your Q, the longer you are also avoiding CC. However, you can also release the Q bite much sooner to only travel halfway through a character model, or only to simply do the damage and heal by biting them. A little nibble, if you will. If you want a detailed breakdown with slow visual examples of this, please see my first ever tutorial which was dedicated to using the Warwick Q properly, and I'll put it in the top right. Moving on to the W, which we talked a little bit about in the rune section. You're probably asking why I didn't say that I maxed Q. And that's because I don't. I max Q second and I max W first. W is a lot more scaling in terms of its CDR, movement speed, and attack speed. I find this significantly more useful in the grand scheme of things in terms of being able to get around the map and using W in chase downs, as well as in early mid-game 1v1s and skirmishes with the added attack speed benefit. The added healing from your increased attack speed, which scales from 50 to 100%, and because of Warwick's healing passive while being low HP, compensates for the loss of healing on your Q when you don't max it. And so even though you lose that damage burst from your Q, the overall package of W is more useful to scale given how well it does early on. Since the first buy on Warwick is also Tiamat, and should always be, the splash damage on monsters means more lower HP targets and more attack speed for a faster clear. In addition to all of this, Warwick's W also provides the passive and active ability to hunt a target. Pressing it will sense out the nearest enemy champion within a given radius for 8 seconds and allow you to chase them down regardless of their current HP, really useful for ganking when you don't have a low target. However, passively you will hunt targets across the map that are below 50% HP, so continuously look for enemies that are low. You don't want to ignore it. Being able to quickly arrive at a situation gives you huge map presence, extra kill possibility, and easy gank opportunities. Coupled with intelligent uses of Q, and you can quickly grab momentum swinging kills for your laners. The bonus movement speed from maxing W also helps in this situation. Finally, remember that your W will mark the enemy on the map for your team, and so you can track their location by activating W and using it as a scouting tool during important moments in the game. Warwick's E is his tank modifier and CC ability. It reduces all incoming damage for 2.5 seconds before self-activating and fearing enemies in the other direction for an additional second. You can also reactivate E early if you wish, specifically after a 1-second channel when you press it. This ability is Warwick's primary CC and ganking before level 6 and can be used from a variety of angles and timings. You can charge the E while fighting so you can reduce all damage they do before you fear them, or you can use it from range as you approach in order to fear them immediately. And it's important to note that pre-charging the fear means you lose the damage reduction, but you can do enough to easily burn flashes and kill the enemy without it, making it a really nice counter-ganking move as well. If you have primed the E, it will automatically activate when you land your ult, so using this as an engage can be very important in the latter stages of the game. Keep in mind that feared enemies will move away from you, and so positioning is important when you use it. And if you can use it along with your Q, as I do here on this Malzahar, it will guarantee a kill, especially if they have a ready used flash. Finally, Infinite Duress, Warwick's R. He will launch himself in a target direction and suppress the enemy for 1.5 seconds. He does magic damage and applies on-hit effects for every 0.5 of a second, as well as healing him for all the damage dealt. This damage does scale with AD, it's worth noting, to the tune of 167 bonus AD, but as with all his abilities, does magic damage. So it's important to understand that Warwick is very much a hybrid damage dealer, and most of the time you should do slightly more magic damage than physical damage, as even his autos have an added magic damage component from his passive. Warwick's ult range scales with how fast he is moving, at 250% of his movement speed. So if you're chasing a super low HP target, have home guards, max W, maybe have a cloud drake, you can probably jump pretty far. However, I always recommend using your ultimate in situations with the highest probable success rate because enemies can flash and move away from it, and the longer range the jump is, the harder it will be to predict their exact location. You can also flash ult to guarantee the proc, and also remember that it can be used as a CC dodger because you are immune while you are jumping. Additionally, it can be used as an escape route from dangerous situations, or simply as a gap closer where you can use your Q and E to secure a kill. You don't also have to hit the R for it to be useful, so keep in mind the other possibilities available to you. Right, now let's briefly discuss how to itemize Warwick in the jungle. He will always be a bit more tanky as he does enough sustained damage and healing while putting himself in situations that can get him focused hard. Being squishy isn't the most optimal route for success, especially in lower and mid MMRs where you want to go around the map and be alive as much as possible. The first item should be Tiamat, so ideally you aren't going back until you have at least 1050 gold from the machete and healing bead start. From here I always go Skirmisher Smite for the dueling potential because you usually want to be aggressive with Warwick even in the early game. Be active with your counter jungling, especially once you have that Tiamat. The core items are Cinder Hulk and Hydra for me. I will usually complete these first in an ideal game, but if I am behind, I will finish the Cinder Hulk and move on to tanky items before I complete Titanic Hydra. If however I am very fed, I will finish Titanic Hydra before finishing Cinder Hulk. In these games, I probably will also rush Jhin into Iceborne Gauntlet before I go into any other tanky routes. I don't go Triforce as I believe you should still get those resistances and CDR, which are very effective stats on Warwick, especially if you are ahead. Spirit Visage is a defining item with a healing bonus passive, and in games where added tankiness is required, foregoing Iceborne and going straight into more conventional tank items is a smart option. Choose relevant boots based on the enemy composition between Ninja Tabby and Merc Treads, and remember that all other tank items are highly situational, but a few suggestions are presented on screen for you. Because of Warwick's AD scalings and his high damage, you can go a more squishy damage dealing route. I just don't think it's the most optimal way to play him. It has higher risk, but if you do prefer more tank shredding and high damage, then Blood Razor is an option, but while you'll be stronger in a 1v1, you will be much weaker in brawly team fights where you might be focused. Let's use the ability knowledge we now have and examine our first clear in early game. You can start W and not receive a leash, as your Q will help heal you up on the very next camp and save you some mana usage, but starting Q is the standard option. Remember not to use it right as you start clearing the camp if you are tanking it, because it also heals. So once you take a little bit of damage, you can chunk the camp to heal at the same time. Typical clears will range from red to wolves to blue on the blue side, and blue to wolves to red on the purple side. From here, I like to look for a level 3 gank or the enemy jungle and scuttle crab. Pay attention to how vision works in the river bush. You can't see on the other side at all, and so any adventurous junglers can run into you, and if you keep the scuttle crab on one side, that can work to your advantage. In this case, the Shyvana does walk into that bush, we battle her, anticipate a flash, stick to her with a Q, and secure for his blood. Warwick is a high sustain clearer at the start, and so it gives you ample opportunity to make an impact early, and I would highly recommend attempting to do so, as you want to reach that 1050 gold threshold as soon as possible. You don't want to go back and get one long sword and a pink. Ideally, you want to get team out on your first buy. So, how do we effectively gank with Warwick? Despite some people thinking you should farm until 6, you really shouldn't. Warwick thrives on using his E-Fear proactively to burn flashes, or abusing lanes where flashes and dashes aren't present. It's usually easy to execute a gank by simply charging up your E while fighting, following through with your Q to reposition and avoid potential CC, and then auto-attacking consistently and in between your spells. Because of Warwick's W passive, low targets are usually very easy ganks and require you to consistently pay attention to the map in order to make the most out of this ability. Ensure you capitalize on any low targets, and of course, the same ability makes counter ganking extremely potent, even more so with your ult. Warwick's ult grants an extra tool to suppress enemies, and when used with a pre-charged E and a W active, as I do so here on the Draven and Taric, can really help turn the tides in a losing lane just by how fast and smoothly you can punish an overpushing enemy. Also remember to use a pre-charged E with flash to guarantee CC before using your ult and or Q to finish off targets. If your lane has their own CC, channeling that together is optimal. If it is a clear 2v1 and your damage reduction is really not needed in the battle, following up the fear with an immediate ult is also enough to secure a kill. But keep in mind using your E too early, as the damage reduction is crucial in close fights and can net a victory when timed to perfection. Along that note of ganking, let's return to objective taking briefly. Warwick can easily take dragons and solo Rift Herald at a certain point, but that doesn't mean it's always a good idea to do so. Keep in mind the state of your lanes, who is pushing, who isn't, and who the enemy jungler is, and what would happen if you didn't track his or her location correctly. Nevertheless, dragons are free for you to take when the situation presents itself, and only gets easier with more items. Having 2 smite charges is optimal to speed up the process, and remember that if you are blue side, hug the backside of the pit, and if you're purple side, make sure to pull the dragon out just in case you have any interference. Let's pull everything together now and close out the guide by talking about teamfighting and late game decisions. Yes, Warwick can split push, engage, and peel. Even without the ultimate, you can hard engage with Flash E and have incredible synergy with Orianna and Lulu because of this. He thrives in more segregated and messy skirmishes rather than a straight up organized 5v5, especially if the enemy has a lot of peel, tanks, and CC. Alternatively, you can use your ult and E to keep your teammates safe rather than engaging onto the enemy team. Remember, peeling is still a thing, and just because you are Warwick and not Maokai doesn't mean it goes out of the window. Be aware of your role in teamfights. If though the enemy has a Vayne and you have the ability to lock her down as your team combines with you, do it. Always be aware of attempting to make a hard engage with your ult into a full team. It won't always end well, and your team might not be in range to assist you if your lead was way too large. Make sure you know the role and your responsibility. Take advantage of poor positioning by the enemy to flash engage. All of this can be turned into objective advantages. An engage doesn't always have to be with your ult and can be used as follow-up to lock down any fleeing enemies. Finally, using your presence as a disruptor is most important. Even if you die, taking the focus of important carry targets or taking out the enemy's engage tool can cause enough confusion and for your team to gain the upper hand. Constantly look to interrupt, interfere, and punish low HP and out of position enemies to turn subsequent fights into your favor. Alright, even though Warwick isn't the most complicated champion in terms of his kit, I hope you were able to gain a deeper understanding of how he works and how you can use his abilities to carry more of your games. Warwick is a strong pick in most ranked MMRs and matches up well in 1v1 situations. Thank you all for watching. Please comment below to let me know your thoughts about Warwick. Please like the video if you learned something and enjoyed it. Subscribe for more jungle guides coming soon, and I will see you all in the next tutorial.